following matchup versus Malaysia and Canada. Our first player, of course, is Amrit Mann, who has a team of Mousehold, Annihilate, Indeedee Male, Sneasler, and Tyranitar, and Excadrill.
Yeah, this team is... Components of this team are... you would almost say it's like a 2-2-2 kind of team, right? You've got the Mousehold and Annihilate. That's a really nice pairing. And then Indeedee Sneasler, also a very nice pairing. And then Tyranitar. Excadrill, also just a really fantastic pairing as well. And then a lot of the concepts between these teams is that you just pick the two cores that go well against what your opponent is going to have.
Yeah, exactly. It is quite a good thing to have as well when you have these different modes. We have seen the resurgence of Indeedee Male and Sneasler do amazingly, and now Mousehold Annihilate trying to have like a bit more bulkier version instead of like the offense that Indeedee Sneasler, Tyranitar, Excadrill can provide. But honestly, I'm always a fan to see Annihilate. I detest playing against, but it is such a strong Pokemon to see in action every time because it is able to survive so many hits and it keeps surprising me every time, especially next to like things like Mousehold.
Oh yes, once you get that bulk up get going, and then the Mousehold has also gone for the beat up, those Rage Fists hit really, really hard. And you can't even intimidate this Annihilate because of its ability to fire, which means if you try to intimidate it, it actually gets a +1. And if you try to burn it, well, guess what? It's Terra Fire. So, you know, that's something maybe the Annihilate might want to go for.
Yep, exactly. So let's take a look if we can see an Intimidator on the second team as well. We have, of course, Navjit Joshi. No Intimidate, but with a World's Top 8, Portland Regional Top 8, World Cup MVP even, and World Cup finalist Canada in 2022. Quite a few accolades as well. Forgot to mention the last ones, but we have the team as well here.
Yeah, Navjit is a really experienced player, and he's going to be running a little bit more of a non-standard team. There's the Ninetales, Magmar, Dragonite, Sneasler, Gastrodon, Kingambit, but each individual Pokemon are fairly common in this Regulation H format, but this kind of team composition is not as common. And then you've got that little Gastrodon, which is definitely not a very common Pokemon, but against all these rain teams in the format right now, it can prove to be really useful with its Storm Drain ability and Ground type, making it immune to Archaludons.
Yep, it's good that you mentioned this Gastrodon because I'm seeing a move that I personally haven't seen all that much on Gastrodon, which is Liquidation actually, a bit more physical in that regard as Gastrodon, of course, having the options to run things like Ice Beam, Muddy Water and such, but opting to go for Liquidation, possible defense drops in that regard that you can activate and maybe even really make your Dragonite pop out with some really strong moves as well. Because we are not seeing a loaded Dice Dragon. This is back to the classic. We are with a Lumberry set with Terra Blast, Terra Flying, which has been a while as well for me.
Yeah, it's a bit of a callback to the beginning of Regulation H, but I'm sure this is something that Navjit has, factored into it when team building. Because this team, I'm really curious to see how it's going to operate because I've not seen something like this before. So let's get into our matches. I believe they are ready. So our players are going to be facing off against each other. And here we go. Navjit is going to be leading with the Sneasler and Dragonite up against Amrit's Tyranitar and Excadrill.
Yep, as the Sandstorm is kicking up a storm right now, meaning this Focus Sash on this Sneasler might be in danger as well. If this Sneasler gets hit by an Earthquake, for example, it will be able to faint as well in the following turn because, of course, Sandstorm Chip will make sure that this Sneasler goes down in that regard.
Yeah, and there's a lot of... Excadrill is in quite a comfortable position against this Sneasler, which is outspeed. But the Sneasler is holding a Focus Sash, so it will need 2 hits to be knocked out. It actually looks like Navjit is just going to withdraw that Dragonite immediately, and maybe we're going to see a Ninetales come out and reset the sand and make sure that the Sneasler is once again going to be the fastest Pokemon on the field.
Yep, and with Terrestrialization on the field as well, this Tyranitar was fearing what could happen, what this Sneasler could do, because a close combat would absolutely decimate this, but now having a little bit of a party for itself as it is now a flying type. Let's take a look. It is a close combat into the Tyranitar, correctly called here from Amrit. Not very effective. The defenses are dropped from this Sneasler. Now this Excadrill is still able to go But the poison touch actually making a bit of a difference here instead of like the usual. Oh, the Iron Head into the Ninetales! Amazing call out. One of the few moves that could hit the Dragonite, of course, but like this was a very strong case here as Tyranitar is going for the Rock Slide and doing over half to this Sneasler as well. This seems to have gone from a very smart switch out to half speed control to suddenly a very good position for this Excadrill and this Tyranitar.
A fantastic call out from Amrit there, just knocking out that Ninetales on the switch in, and Navjit is down instantly to 3 Pokemon. That Sneasler has also had its Focus Sash broken, but the Excadrill has not. So there's, the Tyranitar is quite free to just switch out and then switch back in later on to make sure that the sand is then set up for the rest of the game.
Yeah, absolutely. Being able to have this weather control is very nice, especially when your Excadrill, as you mentioned, has its Focus Sash still remaining, meaning it can just really abuse the fact that Tyranitar is the only Pokemon here. Being able to sacrifice your Terra this early, but having it being in such a good position is always nice to have, as the Indeedee is being switched in instead of this Tyranitar. So let's take a look if Navjit might have been expecting this. The Kingambit is just going for a protect here, trying to keep itself safe. I must say, this Kingambit is also huge as a close combat is coming out into the Excadrill, putting it down to its sash. So it's only Excadrill left here to move right now as the defenses are dropped again from the Sneasler. Let's take a look if this Excadrill is able to go for a move. It is high horsepower, but it is into the Kingambit slot, so Sneasler can stay just for a little bit longer.
Yeah, a really nice protect from Kingambit there, and now that Excadrill has been knocked down to its Focus Sash, any attack will knock it out. But the good thing is that with the Tyranitar in the back and being able to switch in, there's nothing stopping Amrit from switching in the Tyranitar, and then the Excadrill can just go for an Earthquake, and there's really, the Kingambit cannot Sucker Punch under the Psychic Terrain. So Excadrill in a really nice position to now start going for those Earthquakes. But of course, Kingambit is a very, very bulky Pokemon, so I don't expect the Kingambit to be knocked out by an Earthquake, but then you've got that Tyranitar that's switched in, and it'll just be able to go for those low kicks onto this Kingambit.
Yep, exactly. So having all these options here in Amrit's position here, being able to freely switch into the Tyranitar, that snow is now gone, just like the Ninetales will not reappear during this match. Excadrill speed is now twice as fast, but we do have the Terra activation here from Navjit. This time it is going to be that Kingambit going for that Terra Ghost, trying to make sure that if there's an Earthquake, it will at least be neutral instead of super effective at the very least. So we have the Earthquake, Tyranitar unbothered, unaffected, and now this Sneasler and this Kingambit will take quite a bit of damage, as Kingambit might be able to take some revenge here.
Yeah, Kingambit takes that so comfortably thanks to terrestrializing into the Ghost type, and that Kowtow Gleave knocking out just that one sliver of HP from this Excadrill. So Amrit has lost his first Pokemon in this game, but Navjit is down to his final 2 Pokemon. Of course, Kingambit is in quite a nice position to, it's a very bulky Pokemon, but now that the Kingambit is a Ghost type, that can now be hit by a expanding force from an Indeedee, or just, or the Caesar, of course, with those, you can't actually touch the Kingambit very much now.
Yeah, the Caesar might not be able to touch it, but this Tyranitar still having, of course, the potential to use its Dark-type moves to try and hit this Kingambit in that regard, as it does carry that knockoff. So in this position, I feel like Dragonite has to somehow deal with this Dragonite before the Tyranitar can deal with this Kingambit. And then I feel we are gonna have a little bit of a roll going on, as it will be a Dire Claw coming in, I believe.
Oh yes, Dire Claw is one of the best moves in the game because of its ability to have that 50% chance to get a status move whenever a hit lands. So, I think Navjit looks like taking quite a bit of time to make his moves, and down to his last 2 Pokemon he has to, and looks like Sneasler just going to protect itself, but the Dragonite going for the Ice Spinner, super effective onto the Tyranitar, instant knockout, and that means the Psychic Terrain is also going to be removed with that Ice Spinner.
Yep, no more Psychic Terrain, meaning this Sucker Punch is back online. Kingambit is ready to potentially could have potentially gone for Swords Dance there and been even in a better position, but you're playing with Sneasler, and a lot of the times you do not want to risk that, as Sneasler did protect itself. Its Focus Sash is now broken as well. Oh no, it was Psychic Seed, my apologies. So it has the Unburnability, it is still one of the fastest things. Psychic Surge is back on the field, so Sucker Punches are back offline actually.
Yes, this Indeedee, very free to just lock into an Expanding Force. Looks like King Gambit's just going to protect itself to scout out what the Indeedee locks itself into. But the Die Claw comes out instantly onto this Dragonite, gets a paralysis!
Ooh.
And is that going to matter? Although I think the Indeedee's Expanding Force should probably knock it out at this range. But oh, actually no, the Lumberry on Dragonite is going to cure it, so
There's
proving
always
itself
time
to
for a
be... There is indeed. But now the Expanding Force comes off and knocks out the Dragonite, and it's going to be that King Gambit on a 1v2 up against this Indeedee and a Sneasler that does have Throat Chop.
Yep, exactly. So this Sneasler is able to hit this King Gambit. Indeedee with a single target Expanding Force can decimate, do absolute amazing damage as well. But Navjit, seeing the writing on the wall, has decided to forfeit this first game and focus on game 2. What are some adaptations that can happen here?
That was a really well played game from Amrit there. Just getting rid of that Ninetales on the switch in was such, I think it was a pivotal moment, because then the Tyranitar, it wasn't threatened by any of these ice moves. It had Terrestrialized into the flying type, and because Navjit was down to 3 Pokemon instantly, it was very, very difficult to pivot around and get a better board positioning.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I think it was a very hard call as well with the Iron Hand onto Dragon, trying to break multi-scale in that regard already. And then the Ninetales being the one switched in there, that is of course unfortunate in that regard, as you have lost your weather control. How to deal with this, because with the Psychic Terrain being able to block these priority moves, the King Gambit does seem like a very good option against Amrit's team. It's just trying to find the pathway to victory for that King Gambit.
Yeah, that King Gambit was, like, you can see why it went for that Terra Ghost, because it didn't want to be hit by any ground type moves. But then that meant that it could then be hit by the Psychic type moves from the Indeedee, and also was weak to the Throat Chops from the Sneasler. The Sneasler carried 3 coverage moves, so had a lot of different options against her. But let's see what our players are going to adapt into for our game 2. I believe that is ready, so we're going to jump into that very, very shortly.
Yep, we have the King Gambit and Sneasler on the field here, while we have Tyranitar and Excadrill lead again from Amrit as well. So just going with the reliable way of putting up the sand and trying to move on from there, really.
Yeah, so the lead worked for Amrit game 1, so of course we can try that again game 2. And of course Amrit knows that has had an idea of what Navjit has been playing, and there's probably that Ninetales lurking in the back ready to switch in, take away the sand and take away that Excadrill's Sand Rush ability, or just nullify it so that it cannot have double speed. So is this something that Amrit will take account of and maybe try to switch out the Tyranitar in that turn 1 and preserve it for later? Or is he just going to go immediately on the offensive?
Yeah, this is a hard call to make here, of course, as we have Terra activation immediately. Turn 1, it is the best turn to do it, because this Tyranitar is having itself another party, being ready to just negate this powerful Earthquake that might be on-call for Excadrill, as we have no switch-ins. King Gambit is just going for a protect here, meaning Sneasler is the only one on Navjit's side that is going to be able to do anything. We have the Earthquake coming out, will be super effective, of course, onto this Sneasler, bringing it down to its Sash. But with that, Sneasler can go for another move in this following turn, of course. It will most likely go down because of Sandstorm, but close combat into the Excadrill, putting it down to its own Sash as well, and just having a little bit of a game of remove the Sashes.
Exactly. Although the Sneasler will be going down at the end of this turn because of the sand damage. Looks like Tyranitar going for that knockoff onto the King Gambit, trying to get rid of its Assault Vest. And is that Assault Vest, or is that actually? We need to quickly check.
That was the safety goggles.
Oh, safety goggles. Okay, so maybe trying to predict a bit of a switch in, but Sneasel now, having gone down to the sand damage, means that Navjit is going to be forced to bring out his third Pokemon, and that is going to be the Ninetales, which will erase the Sandstorm. At this stage, I would even say the Tyranitar has kind of done its job in allowing the Excadrill to knock out the Sneasler, and I can see maybe an Indeedee coming to switching in just to try and prevent a Sucker Punch on this Excadrill.
Yeah, I think by just letting the Sneasel go, not holding on too much, Navjit has a better position right now, as this Ninetales is the fastest thing on the field. It can hit this Tyranitar, also super effective damage, extra protecting itself. We have Specs, Blizzard coming out, of course. Let's see how much this is doing onto this Tyranitar. It is still hanging on. It is still a Tyranitar. Low kick into the King Gambit will just knock it out as well. So Amrit just deciding, okay, you might have weather control, but I will be taking that King Gambit as well.
Yeah, that Assault Vest for Tyranitar paying off dividends there and forcing Navjit down to his final two Pokemon once again. And Amrit hasn't actually revealed his two Pokemon in the back to Navjit. And now this Dragonite, of course, has its multi-scale intact, and without the sand, the Excadrill is actually slower than the Ninetales. So Amrit maybe, at this stage, he might want to actually just think about trying to break that multi-scale on that Dragonite and then letting his Pokemon in the back do the damage.
Yeah, and as we do have a Terra as well this time for Navjit, it is going to be that Ninetales just going all into the power that is Terra Ice Blizzard. Very fearful thing to have opposed to you, but I think Amrit is fine with letting both these Pokemon go down, as the following Pokemon that will be able to follow up will be able to deal a lot of fast damage as well.
Yes, indeed. We saw an Indeedee and the Sneasler in the back, and we know that with the Psychic Seed, the Sneasler can be actually quite bulky with the Psychic Seed active. Of course, Dragonite still has its multi-scale intact, and this is an Ice Spinner variant, which means that it can remove the psychic terrain and reduce the damage of those expanding forces coming out.
Yeah, exactly. So reducing the power is quite important to do, but that is the unfortunate part in that regard, as these two Pokemon work so well together, because Psychic Seed will be boosting the Sneaser's special defense, but also with Unburden being the fastest thing on the field, then followed by the Indeedee, because it is a Choice Scarf variant as well. So Sneasel just having to pick who's the biggest threat, because if you let the Ninetales just do whatever, it could just never mind, it just goes down. Despite the snow boost, it is not enough with this Sneasel, meaning only Dragonite is left versus these honestly, two Goliaths really.
Yeah, Dragonite now, I can see it maybe wanting to, so Indeedee of course first going for that Dazzling Gleam, so it's going to be super effective on that Dragonite, and that multi-scale just proving why it's so strong. But Stomping Tantrum coming off, instant one-hit knockout on this Sneasler that I don't even think that defense drop matters. Sneasler is not a very bulky Pokemon, but it also means that because the Psychic Terrain is still active, oh wait, actually no, it's locked into Dazzling Gleam, my bad, but one more. Yeah, the Ice Spinner is going to remove the terrain and bring Indeedee quite close down to in the orange health, but Indeedee's Choice Scarf is locked into Dazzling Gleam and there's nothing Navjit. Oh, it can do Extreme Speed, and that is enough to get the knockout, so Navjit actually proving that this old school Dragonite with the Lumberry is still a really valuable asset in this game.
Honestly, I was quite surprised to see how little the Dragonite took from that Dazzling Gleam. As we know, multi-scale halves the damage that is being done, and from what we saw, it not even being like 30%, meaning this Dragonite was able to survive, getting rid of the Psychic Terrain, and then being able to Extreme Speed gave Navjit just a fighting chance. This Dragonite was just a bit more bulky than most loaded dice set, which tend to be like full a lot of speed and a lot of attack, as this Dragonite opting to be more bulky, as you said. So having brought that back, I'm genuinely impressed. First off, I believed in Ninetales maybe a bit too much, as I was expecting Snow Boost. It can survive close combat fights, but I was quickly proven wrong.
Yeah, I think this Dragonite set from Navjit is was really pivotal in that game, because the common loaded dice sets we see just have scale shot, and that is actually, to be fair, in that game, if it had scale shot, it probably may have still gotten the win because it would have had the speed boost, but with the combination of Ice Spinner plus extreme speed was just really, really helpful in ignoring that choice scarf from the Indeedee. So really well played from Navjit there. For a second, it really looked like he had his back against the wall with 2 Pokemon against 4.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's the thing with these fast offensive teams. If you are able to bulk it out, sometimes you can find the way through, as this Dragonite did. So we do have kind of an idea what both players are trying to attempt here. So now, having learned both strategies that these players are willing to try and use to just, okay, it's fine to let Pokemon go. We'll just go 1 for 1, move from there on. Let's see what they will do in Game 3, because this is bound to be interesting to see the adaptations, really.
Yeah, Game 3 is ready. It's going to be a Gastrodon and Sneasler up against, once again, the Tyranitar and Excadrill. So Navjit changing up his leads once again, whereas Amrit deciding that this is the lead that he's most comfortable with up against Navjit's team.
Yep, we have the Gastrodon being able to honestly take Earthquakes quite well. It has access to Earth Power, Yawn to maybe potentially slow the game a bit more down as well. So I can definitely see this Gastrodon being the pivotal Pokemon here to try and find a way through, as of course, you want to get rid of the sashes that are here currently gathered. But with the Gastrodon just being able to deal as much damage for maybe later on, or better positioning with Yawn, I feel like this could be very interesting, as we have immediate Terra yet again. It is Game 3, it is Terra, but Tyranitar just really likes his balloons, alright.
It might be Tyranitar's birthday. Maybe that's why he's got so many balloons. And this Tyranitar now is going to become the flying type. A Fake Out comes out instantly onto this Excadrill, breaking its focus sash and flinching it for this turn. Now Tyranitar does get the knockoff onto this Gastrodon, so no more recovery by Citrus Berry. It looks like Gastrodon is going to start spreading the sleeps throughout the rest of Amrit's team. Almost maybe trying to become a bit of an Among Us there.
Yeah, just a turn slower, but in that regard, still very effective, as now the Excadrill is able to still Earthquake, but you are risking that or your Tyranitar falls asleep in the following turn, or you're trying, or another Pokemon might be able to take this Earthquake. But this is quite unfortunate, because like if there was a Fake Out plus Earth Power into the Excadrill, being able to get rid of that Excadrill turn 1 would have been amazing, but this Excadrill has Protect, so it is one of those things where you have to kind of know what your opponent is going to click, of course, and high stakes game here, as Excadrill is going for the Protect here.
Yes, Excadrill protecting itself, trying to scout out what Navjit's going to do. That close combat coming off onto this Tyranitar, possibly Navjit was trying to predict a switch in, but looks like Amrit's just content to allow his Tyranitar to fall asleep this turn. But Terra Blast now coming off onto this Sneasler. The Terra Flying, super effective, is easily enough to knock out this Sneasler, and I think for Amrit, probably deciding that was a worthy trade, and that liquidation does very little to this Tyranitar.
Yeah, most likely expecting a switch out. If Sneasler or Indeedee were the 2 Pokemon in the back again to switch out for this Tyranitar, they would definitely have taken massive amount of damage. But now, with Tyranitar asleep, you are forcing yourself in a position where you can yet again blizzard your opponent, left and right, because Excadrill Sash is broken, Tyranitar is low and asleep, and this Gastrodon is still on the field, being able to yawn things left and right.
Gastrodon is a very bulky Pokemon, and it looks like even without the Citrus Berry, has quite a bit of longevity on the field. But I can see Amrit maybe wanting to switch out his Tyranitar here, or maybe just as we've seen in the previous games, allowing his Tyranitar to go down. Now Gastrodon actually is going to withdraw, so Navjit wanting to preserve it for just this turn and allowing that Dragonite to come back in. So Dragonite, a much more offensive option. Looks like Navjit also going for that Terra Ice option onto his Ninetales. So this Snowy Fox is going to deal even more damage with that Terra Ice.
Yep, this is going to hurt. It is choice specs. It is in the snow. It is 100% accurate. This is the world's strongest blizzard here. As Excadrill is actually being able to take it, but frozen. What?
Oh, that's very unfortunate for the Excadrill because an Iron Head could have come off onto this Ninetales, and now this Excadrill hang on to its focus sash or invisible focus sash, but that freeze is very, very detrimental to it.
Oh, that is devastating, in all honesty. This is Excadrill was potentially able to move, being able to Iron Head, for example, the Ninetales, or even do some damage at the very least. But now in this position, this was worse. You would rather have your Excadrill be KO'd, if anything, because yeah, this is like such a bad position suddenly now. It's gone completely upside down.
Yeah, if the Excadrill had been KO'd, then at least that would have been a free switch in. But it looks like the Ninetales on Navjit's side is going to withdraw into the Gastrodon, so maybe trying to take a super effective fighting type move. Excadrill now forced to withdraw because it's just a little bit of a sitting duck or a sitting, is it a mole?
Mole,
but
yeah.
Indeedee comes out onto the field, activates the Psychic Terrain, so Sneasler's Psychic Seed will be used up. Sneasler getting that +1 to special defense, not going to matter against this Dragonite. The Diaclone coming off, is that going to get a status? Actually, this Dragonite Stomping Tantrum going to come off super effective onto the Sneasler, easily enough for a one-hit knockout, and all of a sudden, Amrit's in a really bleak position with that frozen Excadrill, and Indeedee probably forced to lock into an Expanding Force at this point.
Yeah, okay, so we have Expanding Force still on the field. This Excadrill might be frozen and looking like Corviknight halfway down, but this Excadrill is still one of the fastest things on the field, so depending if it is able to unfreeze, unclench right now, unfortunately not going to happen as this Excadrill is still staying frozen. Ice Spinner will remove any sort of double target Expanding Forces, and this Gastrodon seemingly to be the right answer here for Game 3, as Liquidation will take it out, and it's just this Excadrill, yeah, just a little bit frozen in time, really.
Yeah, this 1 HP frozen Excadrill can't do very much against the Dragonite with extreme speed, and it's also in the snow as well, so, you know, Dragonite now going for the extreme speed, just to make sure that the Excadrill doesn't thaw out instantly and start going for those Iron Head flinches. But that was quite a bit of an unfortunate turn